Today is the first of three parts where we're looking at John chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. There are three clauses in the verse, obviously, and we're going to break those out. Each will get its own week. Today we look at clause A, and let us take a look. NRK, ein hologos. In the beginning was the Word. So what's the subject of this clause? In English, we're tempted to think that the subject is the beginning because, pardon the pun, it's at the beginning of the verse. But because Greek is an inflected language and we see that hologos is in the nominative case, we know that the subject of this clause is the Word. This is a clause about the Word. So, what does hologos mean? It means the Word, as I have said repeatedly. We're going to do a deep dive on that in the Wednesday Word of the Week. But to suffice for today, hologos is a thing, a word, a saying, a matter for consideration or discussion, or in a more esoteric sense, the embodiment of the thought or intentions of divinity, like God's will moving in the world. So this is a clause about hologos, the Word. What does it tell us about the Word? Well, let's take a look. NRK, in the beginning, ein hologos, was the Word. So what is it telling us about the Word? It's telling us that the Word was. Not the Word is, not the Word shall be, but the Word was. And it's telling us that using the imperfect tense, ein, which is the third person imperfect. He, she, or it was in the past in a continual sense. So eimi, I am, is in the present tense, obviously. Third person would be estin, he, she, or it is. But ein, he, she, or it was in the past, continually being. So when the beginning was happening, NRK, in the beginning, ein, hologos, when the beginning was happening, the Word, hologos, was already existing in a continual fashion at that time. Why do we say the beginning when the clause here says NRK versus entearche? We would expect entearche for the beginning, in the beginning. There's no article here. Well, there's a thing called Caldwell's rule that helps to explain why hologos has the article and arche doesn't have an article. It's not tearche, it's just arche. Caldwell's rule states, and this is a summary, when a definite noun appears before the verb, it is anarthrous, meaning it doesn't have the article. But when a definite noun appears after the verb, it is articular, it has the article. Here comes an important part, though. And the definiteness of the noun is determined by the context, not by the word order. When people make mistakes regarding Caldwell's rule, they invert that. They turn around and they say, well, it must be definite because it's in front of the verb and it doesn't have the article. That's not the case. What the rule states is definite nouns in front of the verb won't have the article, where definite nouns after the verb will have the article. We know that the noun here, arche, is definite because NRK in the beginning is such a clear allusion to Genesis 1:1, right? Everyone who hears John's gospel recognizes that phrase from the beginning of Genesis. It's so clearly an allusion to that we have to treat it with the same definiteness that we treat Genesis 1:1 with. So we know it's definite by the context, and we understand the absence of the article because of Caldwell's rule. So for those of you who are grammar geeks, go do a little research into Caldwell's rule. You'll have a lot of fun. If you look into Daniel Wallace's book on intermediate Greek grammar, he shows some places where people have wrongly applied Caldwell's rule and how they flip it around and try and make it dictate whether or not there should or shouldn't be an article, and in determining definiteness. Anyway, enough said on the heavy grammar. Let's get back to the verse. Why does he say in the beginning? Why not at the beginning, or why not from the beginning? Why not during the beginning? Right? He could do that using a participle in a sense. The preposition en shows us place, not motion. So if you look up a diagram of Greek prepositions, usually you'll see a circle, and in the circle the word en will appear. There'll be an arrow heading into the circle, and that'll have the word ace, into. There'll be an arrow going out of the circle, and that'll have ek or x, and it might have apo. There'll be an arrow that's outside the circle but leading away, and that'll have apo, from. There'll sometimes be an arrow going through the circle, and that'll usually be dia. Right? So the preposition en is just written in the circle, no line, no movement. It's showing a place, even if that place is a place in time, in the beginning. When beginning was happening, in that event, ein hologos was the word. So he chooses to use that en to tell us that the word was, the word existed, the word was ongoing during the event that we call the beginning. In the beginning was the word, NRK en hologos. Let's take a look at an alternative. Instead of NRK ein hologos, he could have had aparcase in the genitive, apo arcase, from the beginning, ein hologos was the word. So it's in the beginning versus from the beginning. In the beginning says that the word, the logos, was existing at the time that happened. But if you take it as from the beginning, aparcase ein hologos, you could interpret that as when the beginning was done, the word proceeded from there. You see how you could misinterpret? You could change the meaning if you change the preposition. NRK, in the beginning, ein hologos was the word. When the beginning was happening, the word already was. Versus from the event of the beginning, the word existed. That gives you the opportunity to believe that hologos, the word, is a product of the event we call the beginning. Right? But John doesn't want us to have that as an option. He leaves us with only one possibility, that when the beginning was beginning, when the beginning was happening, the word already was. Which brings us to the third point. Let's go back to our verb, ein, the imperfect form of eimi, and see how the power of that verb choice affects the verse. There's another verb that is frequently treated as a synonym of eimi, and that verb is ginomai. I become, or I happen. I come into being. And it's frequently treated in different tenses as a synonym for eimi. So, for instance, if we look at our clause again, NRK ein hologos, in the beginning was the word, could have been, grammatically could have been, NRK egeneto hologos, which is the aorist form of ginomai. So it would be saying, in the beginning, the word came into being. Although people fluent in Koine could translate that as, in the beginning, the word was, because they see that as somewhat of a synonym. But it leaves open that wiggle room. It leaves open that semantic range in the word, so someone could translate it that negating the pre-existence of hologos. He could take it and say, well, see, it says, in the beginning, hologos egeneto, the word came into being. In other words, the word is part of the product of the beginning. But John eliminates that from possibility. NRK ein hologos. In the beginning, when beginning was happening, when the things that were created, Hologos, the word, already was already existing, and therefore cannot be a product of that beginning, of that process, of that creation. Hologos, according to John in 1 John 1a, pre-exists the creation, pre-exists the things that come into being at the beginning, because NRK in the beginning, hologos, ein, was, not ageneto, ein, was continually existing when the beginning happened. Pretty powerful stuff. So what does clause A tell us? John wants us to understand from clause A that when the beginning was beginning, when creation was happening, in this allusion back to Genesis 1:1, the Word, the active agent of the divine intent, to go to our classical Greek, the Word already was, and therefore cannot be a part of the product of that beginning, cannot be a part of creation that all comes from that beginning, but already existed. Later on in John chapter 1, he's going to tell us, in fact, that everything that was created in that event of beginning was created through him, and therefore he can't be a part of that creative block of that product. Pretty awesome stuff, pretty magnificent. That's just the first clause in John 1:1. Next week we're going to look at clause B, which tells us, and the Word was with God. And then the final clause will tell us, and the Word was God. We'll break them down in depth. On Wednesday, check back for the Wednesday Word of the Week, and we'll do a deep dive on hologos, the Word. And until then, charis kai irene humin, grace and peace to you.